Hey guys, this is Wednesday's video. As I mentioned in Monday and Tuesday's videos, this one's going to be all about organization, and you can see on your syllabus here, that is the main topic of the day. So in Jack, I'm asking you that you read pages 84 through 87, and we're going to go over a couple of those pages in this video, so just skim them quickly. And then discussion 17 is due. It's peer editing, your last one for the entire semester. To post 300 to 400 words of your op-ed. Like I mentioned before, it can be any part of your op-ed, just whatever you think is maybe the weakest part and you would like the more feedback on from your peers. That would be probably smart to post in your peer editing. And then, of course, tomorrow, do your peer edits by 6 p.m. Same system as usual, and then the paper is due Friday at 11:59 p.m. Like a lot of the other papers. And then we'll get into revisions week next week. So for right now, let's just go ahead and jump into organization. I'm going to show you some stuff from the book. I'm going to show you the outline that I have mentioned and shown you briefly before, and then we're going to see how those apply in some sample papers. So let's look at the outline first, and then we will jump into the book. Again, all of this is online, so if you have questions about it, go to the coursework papers, op-ed, and then op-ed samples, or just the assignment sheet rubric and the outline structure. Okay, so in discussion 16, I asked that you put 2 to 3 topics down, and I probably provided some feedback with your topics to try to help guide you more toward an op-ed structure, op-ed genre of the paper. So what is your topic? What do you want to argue about that topic? Because this is going to be a persuasive based, an argumentative based paper, more so than any other paper you've written in this class. And then what are 1 to 2 sources you could research to help support your point? So I'm asking for a minimum of 2 sources, and again, they do not need to be as academic as a qualitative research paper, but they need to be not blogs or like even just dictionary or encyclopedia or Wikipedia sites. Don't include any of those. They need to have some sort of credibility, but they can be websites. Think back to Jack when it said .edu, .org, .net, and .gov. Those are typically more credible than .coms because they are associated with networks, organizations, governments, or educational sites. So just keep all these things in mind when you're thinking about credibility of your sources. What 1 to 2 sources could you research to help show the side of the opposition? So this is going to be really important, and the thing that students they can screw up pretty easily is they have this really clear opinion that they want to argue, and then they forget about the opposite side. So that's something definitely to keep in mind. You must have a counter argument paragraph, so you at least nod to some aspect of the opposition, whatever that may be. So I'm asking that you don't tackle huge issues like, abortion or euthanasia or gun control, these really big issues that are nationally and globally debated. Those are probably not going to be good for 700 words of a relatively informal paper. So a lot of the things I'm encouraging you toward, and a lot of the samples I've shown you, are about Morgantown issues, local issues, West Virginia issues. They can be related to your major. Some people wrote about the occupational therapy program here and how difficult it is to get in, how they need to lessen the reins of the admission process. So it's basically, there's this issue that exists, and hopefully it's a local issue. You are writing this op-ed to change the opinions about this local issue, to call people to action, something like that. Pretend like you're going to actually file it to a committee. That might help. Or you might even publish it in the school's newspaper in the opinion column. So all of those things are to keep in mind for your overall paper. Okay, so here again, we have introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion. So going more in depth, your hook, I've said it before, but I have written out here the 5 hook types that are traditional for most papers, but specifically op-eds. So you can ask a question. The musically inclined paper, if I can remember which one that was. Yeah, here it is. So this student starts out with a list of questions. Those are his hooks. And I highly encourage the list of questions rather than just one question, because it puts so much pressure on that one question to be answered throughout the paper. Also, make sure you can answer the questions. It's better than having this list of hypotheticals that the paper never addresses. It seems like the researcher is like scared of those questions or shies away from them too easily. So list of questions would be good to start out your paper. A good quote. A lot of you in your proposals, you started your proposal with a quote. That's great. A statistic or fact. This was, again, more toward the qualitative research paper, but you can have, if you're writing about transportation issues, then we might need to know about a statistic or fact about those transportation issues. A strong sentence. This one's probably the hardest one for English 101, 102 students to write. This is more for, I guess, academia-inclined papers. One would be, the pen is a metaphorical penis. And so the use of that word is striking. It's a strong sentence. It gets your attention right off the bat. And so you want to keep reading to understand a little bit more about what's going on in that sentence. So I would say go more toward these routes. Strong sentences, a lot of times students think they're writing strong sentences, but they fall into cliches. And that's one thing definitely to avoid for this paper is cliched language. So again, these are the ways that I recommend over strong sentence. And then story. So one of my student athletes that I'm working with, she wrote a paper, a persuasive essay about parking in Morgantown as a popular topic. And she started out her paper with a story about her and her teammates trying to find a parking spot downtown, and how basically the steps and the thought process that they went through in order to try to find. And then at the end of her introduction paragraph, she had a thesis statement, which basically laid out the groundwork for the rest of her paper, of course, saying that there needs to be more parking in Morgantown in terms of lowered cost, more available spaces, and more reasonable deals, essentially. So then that leads up to the thesis statement, and this should have two things. It should have an argument, so not just like something as obvious as Morgantown is a city in West Virginia. That would be not a thesis statement. That would be ridiculous. It's a fact, right? It's not arguable. So this needs to be arguable. There needs to be sides, different angles to this issue. It's kind of like the stakeholder paper, only it's less formal and it's more opinionated. So the thesis statement needs to have, again, an arguable thesis, and then it needs to have maybe a list or a couple of items that are your body paragraphs, so that the reader can understand where the thesis is going. All right, so then here, I've already talked about this. You might have a definition of your topic, like how does transportation work? How does lifeguarding work in terms of the certification necessary? How do music classes work here? I'm thinking of the paper where the student said students should be allowed to listen to music during exams, so we need to set up the presupposition that students are not allowed to listen to music during exams, and that would be, keep in mind the specifics of which class you're talking about, which taxes, which laws, etc. That's something you would go in depth more here. And this is also a great place to use research. All right, argument number 1 or 2. As you can see here, these are made up of topic sentence, support or your source, your argument, and concluding sentence. This is the natural progression of a paragraph, and I'm recommending that you guys follow this more or less strictly. So I definitely am looking for strong topic sentences here. I should know the argument of the claim of the paragraph and the argument of that claim. So if you're talking about music, that would be, or like listening to music in class, the need to listen to music in class would be kind of the topic, and then the argument would be because, why. And that should all be put here in this topic sentence. The counter argument has the same paragraph structure, it's just obviously about different topics. So this would also be a great place to include research, because typically if you are countering an argument that is familiar to you, then you don't have that kind of insider's input to argue for the opposition. So this would be a good place to direct quote their words here. Conclusion. So conclusions are not just a summary of what you've just said. Again, I've said this in other videos. I won't have amnesia from the start of the 700 words to the end. So think about where you could go from here. So you brought up a problem here. You brought up a potential solution here, some opposition to that solution, and then some kind of, you're saying in this counter argument paragraph, here's some opposition, however, my proposed solution still works because of Y. In the future, it will be important to XYZ, or one paper about taxation of WVU and West Virginia's education system, and how a lot of the funding has gone away recently because of political situations. So what prediction or consequences might you foresee if you're talking about education and taxation or something like that? So this is pretty much the structure of your op-ed. So you kind of just go in and fill in the blanks, and we'll talk about scene language in Thursday's video for your introduction specifically. And I've already mentioned a little bit of it, but I'll help guide you better there. In your book, as you can see here, they provided a lot of different outline types for you as well. They are very similar to what I've just suggested. They have basically just different approaches to this project, and basically to any paper. But so if you find one of these more helpful, go for it. The paragraph structure should be similar in terms of having a topic sentence, having evidence, and then having a concluding sentence. But if you want to start with any of these suggestions, then I would highly recommend them. Okay, so let's look at just very quickly, sure, this one. Okay, so in here, we're going to skip the introduction because we're going to focus on introductions more so tomorrow. So let's look for topic sentence, evidence, and concluding sentence. Study pills tend to blur the lines between a drug and an aid. So the topic here would be study pills. That's of the whole paper. Blur the line between a drug and an aid. So it's talking about the definition of study pills, I'm assuming, because we're putting them into different categories. And the argument here is the blurred line, not that song, the blurred line between these two definitions. So this is an okay topic sentence, not thesis statement. It could be a little bit better, it could be more developed, but let's keep reading and see what the student does in this sample paper. Zadron Z, I'm not sure, writes, 81% think non-medical use is not dangerous at all or slightly dangerous. Students commonly talk about taking study pills openly as if it weren't illegal. So here I'd wonder like where, and hopefully in the introduction we set up where we are going to be discussing. They even say things like, I don't do drugs, but I do Adderall. So here this would be helpful to have at the beginning of the sentence, like according to DeSantis quoted in Oramus. And are they talking about a specific university, a specific school? I'm not sure. So why do students think that taking these kinds of drugs are okay? So here we have a hypothetical sentence or question. Hopefully the student answers it and makes it non-hypothetical. I would discourage you guys from like plopping questions into the middle of paragraphs. The only place you might have it toward the end of paragraphs if you are going to include questions like this. Just make sure they are strategic and not ways to ask yourself questions when you're writing a paper to generate more material. So a lot of times students just plop questions in because they don't know what else to say. So just make them have confidence in your writing and make it declarative rather than a question. This may be due to the high number of attention deficit disorder (ADHD) cases that are present in society today. For instance, in America, 1 in 10 children meet the criteria for ADHD, and many are given prescriptions containing amphetamines. Since such a large number of people have legal access to this type of drug, it makes sense that its usage is so widespread. In fact, 74% of users get amphetamines from a friend with a prescription. Receiving pills from a friend instead of a dealer makes taking the pill seem a lot more acceptable to many. Okay, so this is actually a decent concluding sentence, and we'll talk more about structure in tomorrow's video, so stick around.